Meet the Orchestra, written by Anne Hayes, illustrated by Carmen Thompson. Meet the Orchestra. The orchestra plays tonight. The audience has arrived. The musicians are coming on stage with their instruments, with a lot of different kinds. They play strings, woodwinds, brass, and percussion. Do you see the mouse? The violin. Players with like instruments sit together in families. The violin belongs to the string family, along with the viola, the cello, and the big string bass. You play all of these with a bow or pluck them with your fingers. Do you remember what with bow was? Arco. And when you pluck the strings, it's called what? Do you remember? Have to get your hand like this. Pizzicato. Yes, pizzicato. All right. The violin is the smallest of the string instruments. Its song can be bright as laughter, light as air, soft as a whisper, or sad as a tear. The viola. As instruments get bigger, their voices get lower. The viola looks and sounds like a big brother of the violin. It has a deeper tone, reminding you of evening shadows, cloudy skies, and the color blue. Cello. You can tuck a cello under your chin. You can't tuck a cello under your chin the way you do a violin or viola. It is so big, you must rest it on the floor. The cello's rich, mellow voice speaks of deep feelings like joy and sadness. It can remind you of the calm beauty of a drifting swan and of the color purple. String bass. Ba-doom, boom, 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 boom. The string bass is the grandpapa of the string family. It is so tall that you must stand up or sit on a high stool to play it. When bowed, its low notes moan and groan. When plucked, its booming sound helps other musicians to keep the beat. Flute. The flute. The flute belongs to the woodwind family, along with the piccolo. This is the piccolo. The oboe, the bassoon, and the clarinet. You blow into these instruments to play them. At one time, all of them were made of wood. Today, the flute is often made of silver or even of gold. To play the flute, you hold it sideways, tighten your lips, and blow across the air hole. With practice, you can trill like a bird or play slow, quivering notes as cool as a mountain stream. Piccolo. The piccolo, little sister to the flute, loves attention and always gets it. This tiny flute is so shrill you can't help hearing it. Its high notes almost pierce your eardrums. Yet everyone loves the piccolo because it has such a great sense of fun. The oboe. The oboe has a mouthpiece made of reed. The reed can be fussy and troublesome. Then it honks like a goose with a bad cold. But usually the oboe can be trusted. The oboe plays that single note to which the whole orchestra tunes just before the concert begins. And then they tune, right? Its voice may remind you of a faraway castle at sunset. Faraway castles at sunset, autumn leaves, and the sadness of saying goodbye to someone you love. Bassoon. The bassoon is like a large folded oboe. It also has a reed mouthpiece. Its voice, like its name, has a kind of loneliness. Yet the bassoon can also be playful. It chats and chuckles with the other instruments. You often hear it chugging along like a tough little engine. Can't you almost see puffs of smoke coming out of the top? Clarinet. This is the instrument my mother played. Here are two different clarinets. The straight one is nimble and quick. It tootles up and down the scale, never tripping over a note. Its cool tones melt in your ears, just like ice cream melts in your mouth. This is the B-flat clarinet. This is the bass clarinet. This very long clarinet is bent at both ends so that it doesn't touch the floor when played. Its low, slow notes may remind you of clouds drifting across the moon or a snake swaying to a snake charmer's music. The French horn. Ooh, the tiger and the mouse are working together. Make way for the brass family. Ba-da-da-da! The powerhouse of the orchestra. Even when they play softly, you can sense a huge cat crouched to spring. The brass do not have reed mouthpieces. Your lips buzzing against the metal mouthpiece produce the sound. The tubes of the horns magnify it, as a bullhorn magnifies an announcer's voice. The French horn is like a big, bright bell at the end of a long, thin tube. The tube is coiled. So valves on the other inside the bell. So the horn can be played with one hand on the inside. Okay, I'm going to start over with this paragraph. The French horn is like a big, bright bell at the end of a long, thin tube. The tube is coiled, so the horn can be played with one hand on the valves and the other inside the bell. There we go. The hand inside softens the sound. Uncoiled, the French horn would reach all the way across a very large room. Someone would surely trip over it. The French horn has many voices. It can calm you with its gentle tones or thrill you with its gallant, hunting call. Trumpet. The trumpet's shorter tube makes it look easier to play than some of the fancier brass. But is it? No, say the trumpeters. You must work just as hard to learn it. The trumpet's call is noble and exciting. It can remind you of flags flying, soldiers marching, and royal persons entering a great hall. Tuba! Boom, 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 boom. The tuba has a large bell and a very long tube. Do you remember that the bigger strings have deeper voices? The same is true of the horns. The bigger ones make lower sounds. The tuba seldom carries a tune. It is more of a rhythm instrument. Its umpas help the brass to keep the beat, just as the thump of the bass does for the strings. Almost done. We're coming up to the percussion, one of my favorites. Timpani or kettle drums. The big kettle drums sit in the kitchen, a percussion section of the orchestra. Everything that is beaten, banged, dinged, or pinged belongs there. Have you ever heard the orchestra rumble with the sound of distant thunder? Suddenly explodes with a boom, boom, boom. That is the timpani. They look like big kettles sitting side by side. Each has a slightly different pitch. You beat rapidly from one to another, making the thunder crash and roll. Cymbals! Psh! Cymbals. The cymbals look like a pair of pot lids. When banged together, they crash with the fury of an electric storm. Wow. If the kettle drums give you the roll of thunder, the cymbals give you the flash of lightning. Hear them ring out just when the music reaches a peak of excitement. This is a proud moment for the whole orchestra. Piano. When you sit down at the piano, the black and white keys make your fingers want to dance. From the center, you can play them all. The high ones on your right hand and the low ones on your left. When you hear a murmur of notes burst into thundering chords, then fade into silence, it is probably the voice of the piano. When it is over, you may want to clap, or perhaps even cry. Look at this special page turner. Turning the pages carefully. Conductor! And last, but certainly not least, the conductor. Now meet the conductor. He is often called maestro, which means master of the orchestra. Maestro means master of the orchestra. That he is, for he leads the musicians at all times. He does it mostly by talking with his hands. In his right hand, he holds a small stick, the baton. With it, he beats time. His left hand motions, you play now, be quick. Livelier, louder, softer. Ah, that's perfect. A raised eyebrow says, you're playing off key. The musicians have taken their places. The strings, who are by far the largest group of players, sit in front, almost filling the stage. The woodwinds sit close together at the center. The brass and percussion are in the back. The conductor strides on stage in front of the orchestra, raises his baton. Let the music start. The orchestra played tonight. Now it's time to go home. Like the voices of their instruments, the musicians drift off into the night. The end. Great listening, Uni.